Hello and welcome to the Radio Tech Guys podcast. You have stumbled upon a podcast that is all about the technology that drives the radio industry. I didn't say it as weird this time, Chris.
Not as dramatic. I'm kind of disappointed, frankly, in how that played out for such a big episode.
That's true. Well, oh well. Anyway, hey, welcome in. We are so glad to have you. Real quick, let's talk about how... No, you know what? Let's not do that. First of all, Chris, how are you?
Oh, how considerate. I'm well. I'm well. This is an unusual event when we're recording this podcast in the same room. Typically, we're separated by 20 miles or so.
21.2, I believe you came up with.
It's good to be in the same space. Very busy. Things busy around here, making progress. How about you? What's going on in your world?
Well, it's about the same. We tend to share a lot of our world, so it's the same. Lots of work. Good work, lots of fun stuff, and election season's coming up. The holidays are coming up. There's just a lot going on. It's good. It's very good. Hey, we obviously want you to interact with us. We want you to get a hold of us, and we have some channels that you can do that. First of all, you can email us at ask@theradiotechguys.com. You can also call in right now at 304-284-2020, 304-284-2020. Chris, what else can they do?
Well, you can certainly follow us on Twitter. That's a great place to be, at Radio Tech Guys, or also search us on Facebook. Just search the Radio Tech Guys. And also you can find us. We'd love you to subscribe. This is the kind of the magic to how these audio podcasts work. We're still a radio company making audio things.
Yes.
We're available everywhere pretty much. iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, which if you don't have it, you can download it for free today just by going to Stitcher.com or searching for Stitcher in the App Store. So
yes, that's exactly
right.
Do
that. Subscribe. And
subscribe.
Never miss a moment of this exhilarating action.
Hey, real quick, I want to give a special thank you to Kirk Harnack for having us on his show last week, This Week in Radio Tech. If you missed it live, it's available. If you search for This Week in Radio Tech or TWIRT, which I just like saying, I think that's fun. You can find that on all the normal podcast avenues and on YouTube as well.
Absolutely.
Chris, introduce our guest, please.
Pretty excited. We this is our first real episode where we have had a special guest to talk about some stuff that they're working on, and I don't think it could be more fitting. This week we're joined by William Irvin. You may know him as Dub, as we do. He is the Vice President of Wide Orbit Automation for Radio. He is on this country's left coast as we speak, and hanging out in San Francisco. And Dub, thanks so much for coming on with us today and taking a little bit of time to talk about automation.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here today.
So we kind of have a long history, our company that we work for, and I guess me personally with Dub, I was trying to figure this out. I think we're in the 18 years potentially of knowing each other or working together. And I remember back, I think we met face-to-face the first time in Lenexa, Kansas, at Computer Concepts headquarters, when a group of us bussed out there. We got in a 15-passenger van and drove from West Virginia to Lenexa, Kansas, which
sounds awful.
It was terrible. In fact, two of us spurred off and said, no, we're not doing it, and took our own car. But we drove all the way out for some training, and you were in support, I think, at Computer Concepts at the time, and that's kind of when we met. We were already a Computer Concepts customer using some the DOS-based, really revolutionary for its time with DCS. And anyway, we've followed the same companies that you have since gotten merged with and moved to. And so the whole iteration, we've seen this thing from DCS and whatever parts of, Scott Studios stuff from the days all the way forward. So it's been a pretty exciting ride, hasn't it?
It has been a lot of fun. It really has. And, we got, the DCS system was really the first viable computer-based radio automation system, or at least the first commercially successful. There may have been a few, but there were a few before it, but none of them really had the commercial success that DCS did. And Computer Concepts was really ahead of its time. The system went on the air, the first one, in 1990, which was almost 30 years ago. And we had that one down in Bluefield. as you know, and which is where I'm from, and how we got to know each other even before that, and how I became aware of West Virginia Radio Corporation before that. But we've had a long and crazy ride through Computer Concepts and Scott Studios and Google, and now here at Wide Orbit, and it's been great. So,
absolutely, I think. So we're, full disclosure, we're Wide Orbit users of automation and your traffic product for radio, and also streaming now, which is kind of exciting, which was acquired recently, and that the Abacast crew is in, and we're working with a lot of those same people. Honestly, this was a little off script, but that's one of the most exciting parts for me. I love the concept of all of the things that are possible, I think, between an automation system and a streaming platform that, are kind of working together, similar to traffic. That's pretty powerful, isn't it, to have all three of those under the same product brand?
It really is, and that's one of the things that excites me the most about being at Wide Orbit, is we have the ability to do that. And we do have some specific plans for integrating streaming with W Automation for radio, and there's some really exciting stuff that we believe we'll be able to do. We won't be doing that in the next year or so, but it's definitely where we're headed. So we're excited about that.
That's very cool.
Good.
Let's talk about some features. I know that we're, full disclosure again, we're a little bit behind in terms of builds. We're not terribly behind, but
us.
I know.
Us.
Shocker.
Come on.
Shocker. But let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff I had mentioned earlier that I think one of my favorite things from an administrator standpoint. This is more heady and less like tech. Less on-air personality related. But one of my favorite parts from the back end standpoint of this system is the configuration being centrally located and being driven by a web UI on a central server. I think that's a gigantic step in when you're deploying a new system in a new facility, or replacing components of an existing automation system in a facility. Having it centrally managed in a database mechanism like you do, I think is fairly unique and also very powerful. What else? I mean, what are you excited about? What are you working on?
So we have a couple of things that we're working on. One of them is mobile application to allow you to control the automation system, and that's something we're going to be launching at NAB next year. I know it's something a couple of our competitors already have, but it's something that we're working diligently on, and we'll be looking forward to introducing that at NAB in April. And one of my other favorite features is our integration not only with our traffic system, but also with our partner Music Master. Music Master is, one of the most probably the most powerful music scheduler out there, and we find that the vast majority of our customers, including West Virginia Radio Corporation, have Music Master, and we offer some really tight integration between Music Master and our automation system, and it drives some functionality that I think is really useful. And maybe a little later, I could show you a couple of my favorite aspects of it, if you like.
Yeah, Music Master is kind of funny. We not to get away from Wide Orbit for a moment here, but we do use Music Master, and those of us that have to deal with it technically don't know a lot about it because we don't deal with it very often.
Yes, sir.
Integration is wonderful. It just sort of happens, and that's been huge for us.
Thank you. We're very excited about it, and they're great partners, and we really appreciate our relationship with them very much.
We're chatting with Dub Irvin. He's the Vice President of Wide Orbit Automation for Radio. So yeah, why don't we go ahead? You said you had some stuff there. Why don't we go ahead and dive into some of that and talk through some of the stuff that you've got?
I'd be glad to. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. So when I was invited to join this podcast last week, I asked some of my colleagues for some topics that they thought would be really useful. And several people wrote back and they said, why don't you cover aspects around the security of your radio automation system? And so I'm just going to try to share the screen here. I made a few bullet points that I hope will help. So let's just have a look here and see what we've got. So let's talk a little bit about securing your radio automation system from threats that come from the internet or from viruses or malware or anything like that. One of the things that we recommend is that your central server. So thinking about a wide orbit automation for radio system, there's a component called central server, and that component sits at the hub of your operation. So you'd have typically one of those in each of your markets. But other automation systems have a similar concept. That might be called a database server or something similar. And I believe that, while I don't want to speak for other automation systems, I believe that the concepts that we'll talk about here would apply pretty universally across any automation system that you might have. So you might want to consider dual homing that central server or your database server. And dual homing means that you'd have two NICs in it. And one of those NICs would be connected to your business network, like what we call the business network, which is where your traffic system, your music scheduling system might be, your other systems that you have inside your radio station, your email, for example. And that may also have a closely guarded connection to the internet, where there's virus protection and all the security that you need to make sure that you don't have that it's not, there should be a firewall where there's not the ability for the outside world to ping your machines, but you can ping the outside world. And then the second NIC that you'd have in that central server would talk to your automation machines, the machines that you have in your control rooms, the machines you'd have in your production rooms, on your PD's desks, and so on. And in that way, the on-air workstations are protected. They cannot get directly on the internet, and therefore hopefully not download any viruses or other issues. But we also recommend virus protection should be running on your automation system, including your on-air machines. And Wide Orbit or your other automation vendor can help you with the proper exceptions to make sure, for example, it's pretty easy. We all understand that you don't want the virus scanning your audio hardware, your audio files, I should say, or the Wide Orbit folders, things like that, because that can really kill performance, and that's of course not good on a radio automation system. So those exceptions are really, really important.
True story. We can vouch for that.
Boy, I went through a period there where, for some reason, I changed our antivirus software like 4 times in 4 years. I don't know why. I couldn't find the one I liked. And every time I did it, I forgot to create those exceptions.
That'll do it.
Wrecked the world. Yeah,
it was brutal.
It will do it. And so that's just something to keep in mind there. And so anyway, those are some really key points. Now going back to the PowerPoint here again, Wide Orbit Automation for radio, and I know most other radio automation systems have a database. And that database is really important. I mean, thinking of your wide orbit system, all of your configuration is in that database. To Chris's point a few moments ago, all of your playlists, all kinds of stuff is in that database. And if you lose it, it's pretty miserable experience. And you're down for hours, if not longer. Like in the case of Wide Orbit, it also contains all of your satellite templates, which basically teach the system how to drive satellite automation. And so it's pretty ugly if you lose that. So systems like Wide Orbit, we write that database out to a file every day. And the idea is that that file should firstly not be on the same hard drive where the database itself is, because you're still only one hard drive failure away from losing everything. But ideally, it's not even on the same machine, or even more ideally, it's not even in the same building. What we really recommend is that you take that database backup and shuttle it off to somewhere that's really safe, ideally being on a tape backup or up in the cloud somewhere where it is protected, so that if you have some sort of catastrophic failure, you're not dead. Then lastly, your audio library. And this is pretty straightforward. Your audio library represents hundreds, if not thousands, of man-hours of labor. And keeping that backed up somewhere is really, really important. Now, in a system like Wide Orbit Automation for Radio, and I know many other automation systems, we have schemes for backing it up, where a copy of it's in your control room, a copy of it's in your rack room on your central server. Typically, one copy of it is rated, so you have different levels of protection there. But another thing to keep in mind is, what if the sprinklers go off in your radio station in the rack room, or what if something worse happens? What if there's a fire? You want to have that audio library backed up somewhere that is secure. And there are lots of ways for that, and there's no right or wrong answer. But what we've seen is people having backups in the cloud. They have backups at a transmitter site and different things like that. And so that's really something to keep in mind. And on the next slide, I'll talk about that a little more. But gentlemen, do you have any questions about what we've covered or any other items you want to say around the items on this slide?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in there. You're talking about backup, and it's very interesting. A couple podcasts ago, we talked about backup method and data storage and data safety. You mentioned securing your data off-site because of a fire or flood or theft or whatever could happen.
Yes.
That's exactly right. And we talked about CrashPlan was a product that we use specifically for the database backup files. We move them away from our building completely, put them on a RAID array in a different data center, and then we back up that RAID array to the cloud. So effectively, we have it in 3 locations at all times.
That sounds like a great plan.
Very important. And we've been there. We've had CS meltdowns, and we haven't had backup files. And oh my heavens,
it's not pretty.
We learned from it.
It's not pretty. In fact, one thing you'll say, you mentioned theft, and then kind of then giggled a little bit after that. But there is precedence. We actually have. We are aware of a customer site where their central server was the closest computer to the front door of the radio station. Oh, and someone who is not authorized to enter the radio station did and grabbed the first computer that they could find.
Oh, wow.
And it was the CS. So so that offsite or that theft is not as far-fetched as you might think.
Unreal.
So,
wow.
It was crazy. So anyway, so those are some points there. So if you like, we can talk a little bit about disaster recovery now. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
All right. The icon to share my screen just slid off the side.
Uh-oh.
There it is. All right. We'll try that again.
Hey, once again, let me jump in. We're talking with Dub Irvin from Wide Orbit Radio Automation. He's the vice president of radio automation. And once again, if you want to reach us, if you have questions for Dub, you have questions for us, I don't know why, probably more for Dub, you can email us at ask@theradiotechguys.com. You can also call in right now, 304-284-2020. All right, go ahead, Dub.
All right, thank you very much. So kind of building on this theme of disaster recovery, one of the things we find that a lot of customers like to do, particularly if you're in larger markets, is to have a redundant automation system at your transmitter site or other location. But it's not something that just stations in New York City or LA need to think about. It's something that really anyone should think about because you have so much invested in that audio library and in your product that it's always wise to find a way to continue to serve your community and serve your listeners, and lastly, generate your own revenue if there's some sort of catastrophic issue at your radio station. So having a redundant automation system at your transmitter site is a relatively cost-effective way to do that. Wide Orbit, and I know other automation systems, have a way to automatically replicate your media asset library and the playlists to that transmitter site, so it can remain current or close to current with all of your content and all of your playlists. And then if something happens, you're able to put that system on the air quickly. And we can imagine that it covers against 3 kinds of types of issues. One of them is a power failure at the studio. Maybe you don't have a generator back at your studio, or maybe the generator's not working today. We've seen that happen before, of course. You can get yourself back on the air and at least serve your listeners and keep your revenue stream intact by moving out to the transmitter site. Or you might have an STL failure. That kind of thing can happen as well. It's a way to stay on the air and continue to serve your listeners. Or, as I hinted earlier, there could be a more serious problem at the studio. We are aware of a couple of radio station fires in the last few years. One was a Wide Orbit customer, and another was not. And the studios were suddenly unavailable. And one of these instances that I just mentioned happened in the 5th largest city in Canada, and they were out of their facility for a long time. So these are all things that can happen. And so you want to be prepared for those, and that's just another really good way to do it. So those are just a few pointers on disaster recovery and how you might prepare for it, and what you might do if you have a problem.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great. It never hurts. I mean, it never hurts. We take it. We have a pretty serious backup regimen that we've implemented that includes things beyond the wide orbit automation databases, but we include things like our Axia configurations for all of our devices, and our Pathfinder database as well. Things that we know we would be in a world of hurt if we were to have to rebuild suddenly and catastrophically. So it's absolutely, it is very important.
The other thing, in fact, let me build on that if I might, Chris, and say, and I should have put these in the slides, your traffic database. Think about what would happen if you lost your traffic database.
I think about it constantly, and then I cry a little bit.
Yeah, and because especially in the case of using wide orbit traffic, where one database has all of your radio stations in it, that's huge. Yep. And then also Music Master, as we were touching on Music Master, it's the song history and all of that is stored there is really critical. So these are all things to keep in mind as you think about your disaster recovery strategy.
Absolutely.
Dub Irvin is our guest. He's the Vice President of Wide Orbit Automation for Radio. So there's a lot of things going on here. What are your clients? I don't know how to ask this. So voice tracking obviously is a big thing. People are doing a ton of that. What else is important in terms of what people are doing with their automations? I mean, obviously what it does is it plays things and automates things, and I mean the basics, but application wise, I mean, are there other things people are doing more now than before, or things that are currently hot that people are trying to accomplish, goals that they have from their automation systems?
I think there are several things I would say, and they really boil down to being able to work from anywhere and integration. So being able to do voice tracks from anywhere, being able to record shows from anywhere, being able to control the radio station from anywhere are all key components. And of course, Wide Orbit and the other automation vendors all have solutions for that. And then there's integration, and that's something, I feel like Wide Orbit was kind of at the forefront of, with our integration with our traffic system, the integration with Music Master. And so those are really where the action has been over the last couple of years, and where I see it staying for right now. So,
what's really been good, something that we've been embracing even more. We've recently started working with the folks at Tag Station, and are participating now in Next Radio with all of our FMs. Specifically, we were most excited about it in terms of our HD FM properties, because of the being able to finally start taking part in the artist experience with album art and car radios that supported it and whatnot. One of my favorite configuration mechanisms, I guess you'd call it, in Wide Orbit's backend is the now playing section, where you're able to define specific drivers for specific vendors, I guess, or you define, what the things that like Next Radio are looking for, and then apply it to multiple stations and just spit that now playing data out. I guess the versatility of, because it goes right back to integration, but I mean, between streaming and RDS and your HD pad data and Next Radio, more and more people, and your websites, people like to show the last 10 songs that played or whatever. There's
absolutely
so many third-party interfaces now that have to talk to the automation system. That's one thing that I've always thought that Wide Orbit handled remarkably well, was the ability to parse out that data in any number of formatting options that you want, and then easily apply it and have it spit it out to. And we're doing that a ton. Like if you would look at RCS right now in this building, there's probably, this data is going 20 or 25 different places, but that's
and making it there. That's the best part.
And regularly making it where it's supposed to go.
Well, we'll have to fix that for you. No, just I'm glad to hear that that's working. I mean, you are right, Chris. I mean, this now playing data, and other automation systems call it like metadata push and different things like that. But that really is important, because we're talking. There's so much downstream of the automation system now. It's not just your transmitter, and that's one of the things that we really tried to facilitate, at least in our product.
Yeah. I think another integration that we've found that is stunning is integration with Telos Axia and the ability to kind of do away with your hardware switchers. And
Yes, sir.
I mean, we've really only introduced that in one market so far, but it was kind of mindset changing. I mean, it works so well and so easily, and it makes the whole workflow easier. It's just that's been pretty neat.
I'm glad to hear that. And one of the things we've recently done is eliminated the need to connect through Pathfinder. So in previous versions of wide orbit automation for radio, to integrate with Axia, you had to talk to the Pathfinder application, which has benefits and negatives. And so we now offer an alternative. You can continue to use the Pathfinder integration if you like, or you can use what we like to call the direct connect, which is where you can connect directly, for example, to an audio driver and then control the GPIO logic directly through that, or connect to a node and do your cross connects through that. So
I want to do that.
All right. Then we can hook you up. We can hook you up.
Yeah, we're not gonna harp on the pet peeves of things, but one of the challenges that we had, again, we're behind a bit. One of the challenges we had in that market, one of the things that I thought was a little bit cumbersome was the way that we had to refresh Pathfinder's data, and then labeling was almost, I couldn't wrap my head around organizing my labels. So that's brilliant. The ability to, like, because generally speaking, if you're automating a radio station, I guess we should tell people kind of what we're talking about here, which is kind of that, you know, in the traditional sense of a radio automation system, you're either serially connected, generally in the old school ways, or even IP connected. But you're talking to a physical box that is an analog audio switcher, and it's turning channels on and off. If you're in a satellite program, your workflow's turning this thing on and then it's turning it off or whatever. But there's so much overhead and duplication of wiring and things in multiple station facilities like ours, where we may have a Fox News receiver and that needs audio enclosures to go to 5 different radio stations. Well, now we have to DA this audio and send it to 5 different switchers, and then we got to parallel the closures. And then when something doesn't work later, you got to go back and figure out where the break anyway, to eliminate all that, if you're using an IP audio system in your environment, you're able to actually over IP, your automation system like Wide Orbit is able to say, well, when we execute this workflow, instead of showing us like this virtual layout of our analog switcher, turn this channel on, we're saying route this source to this destination and do that until this other thing happens. So it's literally, you have an audio source in your IP audio network, you bring it in one time, and the same thing with closures. You bring them in one time and then everybody shares them. Well, when we deployed this in our Beckley market, we did it with Pathfinder integration. And so it goes out and it talks, you give it a login, it talks to Pathfinder and says, here, tell me all the things you have. There are a couple of inherent problems that I think Pathfinder has, which is when you add a new device to your Livewire network, you have to manually go tell Pathfinder that it exists, first of all. And then after that happens, when Wide Orbit reaches out to Pathfinder, says, hey, give me all your devices. In a situation like that one, where we put 4 studios online at the same time, some of it was self-fault of not exactly labeling, like in each of the studios, like the program buses and other things. You go down this list and it's like, my God, there's 300 inputs and there's like, and 200 outputs and there's 5 program ones. And it's like, I don't even know what I'm routing, but that's cool. So now you're saying you can now say, specifically by device, by engine, or by node, you can say, like, when this thing happens, I want you on this specific node to route this source out this destination on this node, and bypass the whole Pathfinder side completely.
That's correct. And one of the benefits to that you just touched on is that when we were connecting to Pathfinder, particularly in large environments, we were downloading this enormous list of all the sources, all the destinations, all the GPIO, and we only needed, and that might be an entry with thousands. It might be a list with thousands of entries in it, and we only need like 12 of those entries. So it was just problematic, and in the past it was shown to cause performance issues on our side and different things like that. And so while we've cleaned up those performance issues, we've still just wanted to simplify it significantly. Sorry, my phone's ringing.
Everybody wants to talk to Dub. That's always the case.
And so it was definitely a challenge, and so we were happy to get rid of that.
That's very, very cool.
Yep.
Dub Irvin is our guest on the Radio Tech Guys. This is episode 7. He is the Vice President of Wide Orbit Automation for Radio. And if you'd like to talk to him or us, putting this out there, I'm just going to tell you, you can call us right now at 304-284-2020 is the phone number to get in on this discussion. All right, so I see it over your shoulder, the effective product placement of, and I don't want to put you on the spot about it, but we did, in fairness, we did talk about it briefly earlier. It looks so lovely. Are you still technically set up to where we can see this wide orbit automation system and see anything, or am I asking too much?
You are not asking too much. I just have to click a few buttons here, and we should be able to see it. There it is. All right. And here we go. So now we should be able to see the radio automation system. And my colleagues are going to tease me because I still have, as you saw when it was over my corner, I still have this old 10-year-old square screen connected to my computer. And so you see that the automation is presented here in a square shape. So some of my colleagues will tease me, saying, "Yeah, I should get a modern monitor where it's the wider view." But you know what? I'm saving the company money by continuing to use this monitor until it dies. How's that?
That's right.
So
I'm sorry, but if you're going to play songs like "Wake Me Up Before You Go," it doesn't matter what kind of monitor you have. It's fantastic.
Is that because the song's so good, or because
it's so good? No, it's so good.
Okay.
It's fine.
I'm curious if there's any. I'm curious. Can we look at the playlist? I just would like to know if there's any Madonna tunes coming up here in the next 10
I would be
minutes or so.
surprised. I don't see any Madonna coming up,
dear.
but
Wow.
she's in rotation. Let me just be honest with you. She's in rotation, but our friends at Music Master have decided that this is not Madonna time.
Oh,
so
okay.
they have decided, and they know music scheduling much better than I ever will. So they have said it's time for Wham. And then we've got a really good one here with Great White coming up.
Oh, it's fun.
But yeah, it's fun. But a couple of the things that we can do with Music Master now are some of my favorite new features of the automation system, and one of them is the ability for unscheduled positions to be left in your playlist so that your jock can fill them if they need to. So what we find a lot of our music customers do is they overschedule hours. They'll put maybe 60 to 65 minutes of music in an hour, and that way, if the commercial load is light, there'll be some extra music left over at the end of the hour, and the automation system will drop it if it's not needed. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. I mean, if you're using our integration with Music Master, as soon as the automation system drops the song, it's unscheduled in Music Master, so at least Music Master knows immediately that the song was dropped. But a better way to do it, we believe, is for you to schedule the right amount of music, and then you can leave a couple of unscheduled categories at the end of the hour, and then if the DJ needs those categories, they can fill them using Music Master's rules. So let's look here at the playlist. Down here at the end of the hour, we can see, first of all, that I'm a little short. In this hour, I only have 56 minutes of content. And here I have, at the end of the hour, I have unscheduled category. And this is category 7 is the name of the category that I have in Music Master. And this happens to be 70s music. So let's pretend I'm the PD of a radio station. And I've said, if the hour is short, I want the DJ to fill this song, this unscheduled category, with a song that can then take us to the top of the hour. So in order to do that, I just select the unscheduled category, and then I select the Music Master widget, and now at the top of the screen it says Unscheduled Category 7. When I click Search, Music Master will give us a list of songs, candidate songs, that could go into this position, and these songs all honor Music Master's rules. So it knows that I've put this song in, that this is going to go at about 1:55 p.m. on Monday, the 24th of October. So these are songs that fit that position perfectly. And here I can see the different options. I can see, you know, the title of the artist. I can see the last time it played. I can see the next time it's scheduled to play. And if I want, I can click one of these songs and click the history button, and I can see a list of every time that this song has ever played. So this song has been in the system not that long, but I can see that it played in the 1 o'clock hour on the 26th of July. And so, like, well, I don't want to play it in 1 o'clock because that song played another time in 1 o'clock. So how about Jefferson Starship? Let's have a look at that. Oh, well, it played in June at 1 o'clock. So I'm not going to be too picky. I won't spend all afternoon looking at songs, but I can see that these are songs that I could play. And then if I want to play that song, I just click insert, and now that song is in the playlist instead of that unscheduled category. And now I'm within 12 seconds of the top of the hour. So that's pretty good. So so that's one of my favorite new features. Now, the other thing I should mention is you could also do this from the stack. Of course, if you, over here in the stack, this is what actually controls your radio automation system. This is what's on the air now. And I could see an unscheduled category position here, and I could just click it, and then it would display on the Music Master widget. Now, another thing that you can do, another way that this feature can be used is if you have the appropriate user rights, you can insert an unscheduled category anywhere into the playlist that you want. And so, for example, when I click insert, I get a list of all of my Music Master categories. Now, that's because I have administrator rights. But a certain DJ may only see 1 or 2 categories of songs that are intended to be fill songs. So I'm going to say I want a disco song, and I'm going to insert it into wherever I want in the playlist. So now there it is, and here are the 3 songs that fit this position in this playlist. You know, it's about 1:45 on this day. These are the songs that are candidates, and of course, this honors all the rotations that your PD has set up in the system. So I'm not going to actually fill that. I'm just going to clear it, and then the automation system will just skip that. But this unscheduled category in the stack. But these are some of my favorite new features, and we're really appreciative of our integration and our partnership with Music Master to bring this functionality to our customers.
That's fantastic. Yeah, really, there's a couple things to unpack there. First of all, the feature of leaving unscheduled categories at the end of the hour. I know a lot of our, especially our very tight rotation format stations like CHR struggle pretty regularly just to keep, they do overschedule, but to keep their separation rules and stuff intact, they're struggling to find tunes a lot of times. So that seems like if you could save 2 or 3 scheduled songs per hour, you're probably going to do a great number to bring back your database to like a manageable level.
Yes.
And you know, and that's a huge part of that. And the feature there to insert from various categories, I could see a ton of applications there. Like you may, if you're like the PD that also does the afternoon shift, you give yourself a lot more flexibility there. But if you have a midday person who like does the request lunch hour or whatever, that's a huge way to do that thing without running your station off. How many times have we heard that? Running the station off the rails because they're just doing whatever. That's very, very
How
cool.
many times have we been at lunch and what station is this? What?
Yeah, it's ours.
No.
And the other thing I would say is you compare this functionality with user rights in the library widget. So what you can do is install the Music Master widget with this functionality, and then in the library widget, configure the library widget not to display songs, not to display music to the DJ. That way, they have to use this mechanism to select the songs, and that way the station's programming rules will always be honored.
I see.
Very interesting.
What's required? This may be more of a Music Master question. Does this require an additional component like the Nexus server? Is that how that works and integrates with CS?
That is correct. It does require the Nexus server, and it does require Music Master version 5, SR, I want to say 16 and higher. So you do have to be on pretty current Music Master. You do have to have the Nexus server, but we believe that there's tremendous value in that.
Sure.
Yeah, that looks fantastic.
That's cool.
That's very cool.
There was one more thing I wanted to talk about today, if I could.
Absolutely.
And that was a new feature that a new partnership that we have, which is with a company called Weatherology. Weatherology is a company that provides weather forecasting services for radio stations. And one of the features that they offer is severe weather reporting. And we all know that radio stations are typically unmanned overnight and at the weekends.
Sure.
And so if you have, you gentlemen are in northern West Virginia, in the wintertime, you could have significant snow or other winter weather events that can impact your listeners' lives. And so with this integration with Weatherology, they will create a weather report or a severe weather update and create that as an audio file and send it directly to your automation system and insert it as the next position in the stack. And in that way, even though there's no one there, you're still serving your listeners with the with real-time severe weather alerts. And so that's something that we consider to be really valuable. But there's also a Weatherology widget, which unfortunately I'm not able to display right now, but there's a Weatherology widget, which if you are live, it can still present that same information to your on-air personnel so that they can do the announcement instead. So that's one of the other new cool things that we're excited about in our system.
That's very, very interesting. So how do you tell Weatherology or automation, how do you tell it when to go ahead and interrupt the stack versus when you're live?
So you can you can configure it so that it knows when you're live or not. So
it knows the hours.
That's correct. And I
see.
believe through the widget, you can also say that one way or the other. That way you have complete control so that it's not just inserting something in and surprise the jock. Although,
Sure.
Of course, the jock can always delete the item once it is inserted into the stack.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Very neat. William Irvin's with us, Vice President of Wide Orbit Automation for Radio. Okay. So we've talked about all things wide orbit. We know that we need to upgrade. So we're gonna have to. Yeah. We're gonna have to do that. We're gonna have to bite the bullet and do it.
We also need a Nexus server.
Yep, we're making a
Weatherology.
We'll call Dale. We need to get on the phone.
Right.
We have some needs. So now, did you talk to Dub about our?
I didn't, but I'm gonna throw it at him.
All right, you can
All
go
right.
ahead.
All right. So one of the things we always do in this podcast at the end, normally we're recording this at 9:30 at night here on the East Coast. So Chris and I are always he's always enjoying a different wine and I'm always enjoying a different beer.
Okay.
Obviously, we're not going to do that today because we're inside an FCC-controlled radio facility. We're not going to do that. But I thought I'd pose the question to you. Is there a wine or a beer, maybe even specific to the Bay Area, that you could recommend?
Oh, that's on the spot. Are you?
You have 4 seconds.
Well, you're a world traveler, we know.
That's
and
true.
You enjoy food. You eat well. But I could not remember if you were a wine connoisseur or not.
I am given to an occasional good glass of wine. Yes, sir.
Well, that's good. That's fine.
Yep.
Alex said he was going to put you on the spot with that question, and I said, "Well, I mean, go for it." Believe me, the stuff that we're normally rating on our wine and beer reviews, I just have to tell you, mine's normally like the $3.50 bottle of wine from Rite Aid.
All right.
Like, that's the level I'm at. So we were thinking we probably had a much better chance of something a little more sophisticated with Dub in the West Coast.
Well, we are in San Francisco, and
Yes.
the wine country is just up the road.
Mhm.
And so there are a lot of good wines up there. I'm not sure that I have necessarily any favorite still wines, but there's a label called Gloria Ferrar, which is a sparkling wine up in Sonoma, which I really like. And that may have been calling. When the phone rang a few minutes ago, I just looked over and saw the caller ID, and it was someone from Sonoma calling, which probably means it was the wrong number. But it could have been Gloria Ferrar asking me.
Or this was a setup. This was a setup.
It was a setup.
They got word that we were doing this,
They
and
might
immediately
Cover is blown.
you're gonna come into work tomorrow and have like 3 cases sitting outside your office
That
door.
would be just fine, actually. So, that's it.
Oh,
So,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's
That's
good.
all. Well, thank you, Dub. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Alex.
Hey, all right. Probably about ready to close this thing out, I suppose. What do you say, Chris?
Yep.
I guess. All right. Hey, once again, we've been with Dub Irvin from Wide Orbit Radio Automation. And like Chris said, my goodness, so many things that we've covered here. Awesome, cool stuff, and stuff that we're gonna have to get on and do.
Yeah, we need to upgrade, but also, so I don't want to tell this wrong. We put a link. We'll have a link in the description here and also in the blog post. But you can learn more about not only their automation product, but traffic and streaming, all of which we can vouch for and
yep, it's all great
and
stuff.
use at it's just wideorbit.com, correct?
It is, sir. Yes, sir.
Wideorbit.com, and also their
Perfect.
Facebook page. Help them get to 1,000 likes. That's another thing. We're so close. I noticed today.
Yep,
we're in the 9 somethings. But hey, it's been great catching up with you. We get to see you like once a year in Las Vegas, and it's not always much time to catch up. And when you're home, that's the other cool thing. We get to see you more than probably most clients do. But it's always great to talk to you and see what you guys are working on. It's always fun and good to catch up. So thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much for inviting me, and we really appreciate, speaking for Wide Orbit, we really appreciate our relationship with West Virginia Radio Corporation. Thank you all very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That is.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you, Alex. That's Dub Irvin from Wide Orbit Automation for Radio. He's the vice president and just an all-around good guy. And hopefully we covered some stuff that was cool to you. We don't do, honestly, nearly as much cool as we should.
No.
Every time I see the integration stuff with Music Master, I think, man, we've got to get on.
Yeah,
that.
we got to move on.
We've been talking about that for 3 years.
Yep, we got to do it. Hey, coming up next week on the show, I'm just going to say Chris and I decided on this topic about 46 minutes ago. So next week we're going to talk about remote gear for your radio stations. That's a big topic. We're going to talk about some remote gear that's being phased out and what you can replace that with. So join us next week. It'll be at the normal time, Sunday night, 9:30 Eastern time. All right?
Yep.
Very good. All right. Once again, check out the podcast website, theradiotechguys.com. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/theradiotechguys. Find us on Twitter at Radio Tech Guys. I got it right this week. Please subscribe to the podcast. Email us, ask@theradiotechguys.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we will see you next week.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, folks.
Thank you. Goodbye.